State your name for the record, please.
Rita Robins.
What's your current address?
3920 Merritt Road, Saxe, Texas 75048.
All right. Have you ever been in a deposition before?
Yes.
All right. When approximately was that?
Over 30 years ago.
Okay. All right. So a little while back. All right. And what did that, what did that concern briefly?
A false divorce case.
A false divorce. Was it your divorce?
I'm sorry?
Was it your divorce?
It was, no, because I was never married, so therefore you can't get divorced if you're not married.
Okay. Was it alleged that it was your
Yes.
divorce?
Yes.
Okay. Have you been a party to any other lawsuits?
Personally or as a representative of an organization?
As a party, so it would be as actually a party.
Was I named as a party?
Yes.
No.
Okay. All right. Please explain that answer.
What's the question?
Well, you said, was I named as a party? No. So what did you mean by that? You're distinguishing by whether you were a party or whether you were named as a party. I'm just wondering what the distinction is. All right, was a golden retriever dog known as Chili Blue ever at your Saxe property located
Yes.
at 3920 Merritt Road?
Yes.
When was the golden retriever known as Chili Blue located at your Saxe property?
The first, second, or third time.
When is the first time that you had Chili Blue at the Saxe property?
When he was 6 months old, he was brought by the Strattons.
And was he left there in your care?
No.
Okay. And how long was he at your property?
3 hours.
And what was the purpose of that visit?
A training day.
If you could explain briefly what a training day consists of.
It's when friends collaborate to assist each other in training their dogs to retrieve.
Okay. And when was the second time that Chili Blue was brought to the Saxe property?
When he was approximately 2.
And was Chili Blue left in your care at that time?
No.
And how long was Chili Blue on your property at that time?
Approximately 3 hours.
And what was the purpose of that visit?
A training day.
All right, when is the third time that Chili Blue was on your Saxe property?
In October of 2016.
Okay. All right, and when, for that third time, how long was the duration of Chili Blue's stay?
He was left in my care at that time.
We believe that the dog was on your property and in your care from October 10th of 2016 until December 3rd of 2016. Are those dates correct?
They're close.
All right, so let's talk about the third time when he was actually left in your care. What was the purpose for Chili Blue being left in your care at the Saxe property?
Basic training.
Could you just explain a little bit, when you say basic training, what does basic training cover?
Are you talking in regards to obedience, or are you talking in regards to retrieving? Two separate entities.
Well, I really don't know. What I'm trying to find out is when he was dropped off at your property and you say it was to cover basic training, what was that intended to cover? Was it intended to cover both of those, or that's what I'm just trying to understand.
Yes.
Okay. So it was intended to cover obedience, and I'm sorry, what was the other one?
Retriever training.
Okay, obedience and retriever training. All right, and what does let's start with obedience, basic obedience training. What does that involve?
I think it depends on the background. If you go to Petco, it's one definition. If you go to a competition obedience trainer, it's another definition.
Okay, okay.
The retriever world has a third definition. So you need to help edify and let me answer appropriately.
Sure, sure. I'm trying to get an idea of in this circumstance, what was the basic obedience training that you were going to give to Chili Blue?
Sit, stay, down, come, a reliable recall, healing both on and off lead.
So you said reliable recall. Is that where the dog will come back to you reliably when you call it? Is that, or what does that mean?
That's a good definition.
Okay, all right. And then you said a few things after that I didn't quite catch. Something about on call, off call, or I didn't quite.
On and off lead healing. On lead and off lead healing.
Okay, all right, all right. So I guess that would just be staying next to you when you're walking without a leash. Is that correct?
That's a good description.
Okay, all right, all right. Okay. All right. And anything else that would fall under basic obedience training?
Manners.
And would that cover things like just not jumping on?
That would cover not jumping. That would be covered sitting while your food is served. That would cover not barging out of a front door when you open the door. Those are things we consider manners.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. Going on to the basic, is it retrieving?
Yes.
Okay. So what would you kind of cover with the basic retrieving?
I don't even know where to start, especially it appears that you're not familiar with the dog world, so I don't know how to...
I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry because I can talk at this level and it wouldn't mean anything to you.
Sure.
And so I'm trying to come down to a level that you will comprehend.
Okay, was there any other reasons for Chili Blue being on your property other than the two types of training we talked about?
No.
Did you own Chili Blue?
No.
Okay, all right. When was Chili Blue first delivered to you?
In October of 2016.
Okay. To your knowledge, who owned Chili Blue at the time the dog was first delivered to you?
Ken and BJ Stratton.
Who actually delivered Chili Blue to you?
Ken and BJ Stratton.
All right. And did you accept the delivery of Chili Blue?
Yeah.
Did you believe that Chili Blue was delivered to you as a gift?
No.
Okay. Did you expect that you would return Chili Blue to his owners at the end of his training?
Yes.
You mentioned that the purpose when Chili Blue was delivered to you was to train him on basic retrieving and basic obedience. When he was delivered to you, did you understand that you had an agreement with the Strattons that that he was provided to you in your care for those purposes?
Yes.
Just tell me about that a little bit when they first came out that day. What time of day was it when they arrived?
Early afternoon.
Okay. All right. And were they there for very long?
Under an hour. We chatted about generalities.
And do you remember any of the specific things that you chatted about?
No.
Was anything else delivered to you other than the dog?
His medication for anxiety.
Would they have brought any food for him? Or do you provide the food?
I don't recall.
And you alluded to this a little bit earlier, but where was Chili Blue housed on your property?
In my kennel.
Okay. And can you describe your kennel a little bit, what it looks like, the layout of it?
I'm trying to think how big it is. It's probably an 800 square foot facility with 8 runs, chain link runs, 4 of which are indoor outdoor. It's heated and air conditioned with plumbing.
And can you explain what you mean when you say it has 8 runs, what a run means?
My runs are 4 by 6. The exterior runs have 8-foot high chain link fence panels. The indoor runs are also 4 by 6 with 4 by 4 chain link fence panels.
And so how many dogs could you have in there at one time, potentially?
Visitors?
Sure, I guess it would have to be visitors since you only have, you only have, I guess, 4 dogs, is it?
I have 4 dogs personally.
Yes.
So 4.
4 is how many you could have personally in there, but
No.
Oh, 4 is the maximum you can.
4, I would have, that's why I asked you visitors or personal dogs.
Okay.
So you need to ask me your real question.
I'm just wondering what the capacity is for dogs to be stored in there. Like,
My personal dogs or visiting dogs?
are your personal dogs of a different size than your visiting dogs for
No.
determining capacity? Okay. All right. With that in mind, tell me why you need me to distinguish between personal dogs and.
Because I have 4 personal dogs that stay in the indoor-outdoor runs that are not allocated to visiting dogs. Does that make sense to you?
Is it all one structure?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just trying to find out, in the entire structure, how many dogs could you
I
store
told
in
you
that
8.
structure?
I told you I had 8 runs.
Okay. All right. So that's the question. So the answer is 8. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And on the day that Chili Blue came, how many dogs, including Chili Blue, were in this facility?
2. I'm sorry, 2.
And is that 2 visiting dogs?
Yes.
Okay. So that would be 6 dogs total.
On the property, not in the facility.
Okay. All right. So you don't store the dogs in the kennel.
Answer the question.
The visiting dogs are housed in the kennel. My personal dogs are housed both either in the kennel or in the house.
Okay, I understand. So the dogs at this time, your home dogs were in your home and not in the kennel?
Correct.
Okay. You said, though, that sometimes they are in the kennel.
Correct.
Okay. So, but you're certain at this time that they were not in the kennel?
Correct.
Okay. At any time while Chili Blue was in your care, were your 4 personal dogs in the kennel?
Yes.
Okay. Was Chili Blue in the kennel whenever you were not working with him?
Yes.
How many times per day did you work with Chili Blue?
For training purposes or for interaction purposes?
Well, let's break it down. How many times a day for training purposes did you work with
Twice.
Chili Blue?
Twice.
Okay. And how long were those sessions?
It would vary depending on the concept we were working on.
Okay. All right. And give me the longest session and the shortest session.
7 minutes would be on the short end, 25 to 30 on the long end. And it would sometimes be 3 times a day, again, depending on the concept.
Okay. So sometimes it would go to 3 times a day.
And then sometimes you would work with him in an interaction, is that correct? Or
We interacted on a regular basis, yes.
okay. And how many times would you pull him out of the kennel to interact with him?
At a minimum of every 2 hours, 2 to 2.5 hours, we would interact.
Okay. When you would pull him out every 2 to 2.5 hours to interact with him, in addition to the 2 to 3 times a day for 7 to 25 to 30 minutes, how long would you interact with him?
Average rate of 15 minutes.
And what would those interactions entail?
We would either air the dog. Are you familiar with that term?
I am not. If you could explain that to me.
That's where you let the dog eliminate.
Did you have any kind of written training plan?
No,
All right. And why not?
it's in my head.
Any other reason?
No.
Okay. All right. Let's start with the first week that you had Chili Blue. What did you work with him? What did you work with him on during that first week?
The first week is typically on lead healing.
Okay. Anything else that you worked on?
Probably a sit and a stay.
Anything else you can think of?
Not charging out of the kennel.
Okay. How did Chili Blue perform during that first week?
I would have to say it was an adjustment period.
And when you say that it was an adjustment period, was he having some behavioral issues, or can you expound on that a little bit?
I feel that it took him a while to adjust to being in a different environment with a new person asking him to think.
And what behaviors did he show that made you realize that? Excuse me.
Stubbornness.
Before we go on to the second week, let's talk a little bit about Chili Blue's daily routine. You know, how many times per day was he fed?
Twice.
And you said you were the only one that dealt with him.
Yes.
Okay. So you were the one who fed him, correct?
Yes.
When dogs are in your care, how do you make sure that they are being fed enough?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
I apologize. When dogs are in your care, how do you make sure that they're being fed enough? Like food?
I monitor their intake
Okay, all right. So you feed them on a regular schedule, is that correct?
twice a day.
Okay. All right. And you said you monitor their intake?
Yes.
Okay. And how do you do that?
By giving them precise proportions and by only giving them, I don't free feed. Do you understand the term free feed?
I think that I can guess that it just means you don't give them a whole big thing and let them eat whatever they want.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So you give them a set portion and you do that twice a day. And do they typically eat that entire portion?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, let's talk about the second week that Chili Blue was in your care. What did you work with him on that second week?
Again, I'm going to caveat my response due to lack of specific recollection. I will tell you what I typically train, if that is adequate.
I mean, if that's your typical habit, that's fine.
left and right turns in conjunction with heeling, on lead heeling. Sit, stay, not barging out of the kennel.
Okay, so it sounds like you continue with not barging out of the kennel, sit and stay, and then you bring in left and right turns. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Anything else you work with him on, or you work with him typically on the second week?
I might throw in an about turn and a U-turn. Depends on how he's doing on his right and left turns.
Okay, and how did Chili Blue perform during that second week?
About the same.
So still some issues with stubbornness.
Yes.
Any other problems that you noticed with Chili Blue during that second week?
No.
Let's talk about the third week that you had Chili Blue. What did you work with him on during that third week?
On lead heeling, left and right turns, about turns, U-turns, sit, stay, recalls, not barging out of the kennel,
Anything else that you recall?
maybe a right pivot and a left pivot,
How did Chili Blue perform during that third week?
adequately.
So was he starting to adjust?
Highly possible. I don't remember the exact timing.
Okay. Did he always continue to have some stubbornness and some issues?
It decreased as the training progressed.
Okay. All right. So he had some, but it decreased.
Yes.
Okay. Any problems with Chili Blue during that third week?
Nothing significant.
Okay. Anything non-significant that you remember?
No.
Okay. Let's talk about the fourth week that you had Chili Blue. What did you work on with him during that fourth week?
Highly possible we started off lead heeling with sits, right turns, left turns, pivots, about turns, U-turns, recalls, most likely at an extended distance, not barging out of the kennel.
Anything else you can think of?
No.
All right. Any problems with Chili Blue during that fourth week?
No.
All right. Did you use an electronic training collar on Chili Blue?
After week 4.
And is that commonly referred to as an e-collar?
Yes.
Okay, and also referred to as a shock collar?
Yes. I'd like to caveat that response.
Sure.
Anyone in the dog world does not say shock collar.
Okay. Okay. And is that just because it has a bad connotation, or?
Correct.
So after week 4, so beginning, I guess, approximately week 5, then you started using the e-collar for training. Once you started using it, how often would you use it during the training?
Chili Blue would wear the collar the entire time of the training session.
And when the e-collar was used, how did he react to the stimulus?
Correctly.
What brand of collar did you use?
Tritronics.
How many volts was it capable of delivering?
Check the manufacturer's specs.
Do you know how many volts it was
No.
capable of delivering?
No.
Okay. Do you know what voltage was used with Chili Blue? Sorry.
Continue.
Were you...
I didn't get an answer to the last question. Do you know what voltage was used with Chili Blue?
No.
Were you trained in the use of electronic, or in e-collars, I'll just call them. Were you trained in the use of e-collars?
Yes.
Okay. And who trained you?
Dobbs.
Dobbs. D-O-B-B-S?
D-O-B-B-S.
And is that the manufacturer?
No,
or?
that's the gentleman who invented the collar.
Well, that's
That's impressive. Okay. And he actually invented the e-collar or the
Yes.
Tritronics brand?
In conjunction with Tritronics.
Okay. And how did you come about being able to work with Mr. Dobbs?
He provided a seminar in the early 1980s.
Was that in California or elsewhere?
Elsewhere.
All right. Any other training with e-collars?
No.
All right. And is the e-collar something you use on regularly in training dogs?
Yes.
What is a progressive bark collar?
It is a collar that is activated when a dog barks. It starts at the lowest level and progresses upward until the dog stops barking. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think so, but I just want to make sure we clarify for the record. So is it a variation on a shock collar? I'm sorry. Is it a variation on an e-collar? I don't want to use the wrong term. Is it a variation
No.
on an e-collar?
It's an independent device.
Okay. Does it deliver an electronic charge to the dog?
I'm not familiar with how it operates.
Okay. But do you use them?
Yes,
But you don't know how they operate?
I'm not. It delivers a stimulus to the dog.
Okay. And is that stimulus electrical in nature?
Yes.
All right. And so what you were saying is that electrical stimulus starts out very low when the dog starts barking, correct?
Correct.
And then if the dog keeps barking, that electrical stimulus increases in voltage, is that correct?
By level, yes.
Okay. And it will increase in voltage until a certain maximum threshold, until the dog stops barking, or it meets that set threshold. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Did you use a progressive bark collar with Chili Blue?
Yes.
How often?
He wore it daily.
Okay. How did he react?
Well,
Now you said he started wearing that e-collar. When was it? Around week 5?
yes.
Okay. Did you put both collars on around the same time, or were they worn separately, or how was that done?
They're independent devices.
Right, I understand that, but did he wear them both at the same time, or how
No.
do you do that?
No.
Okay, so you switched them out, or I'm just trying to get an understanding.
Yes.
Okay. And have you received training on using the progressive bark collar?
Yes.
Okay, and who did you receive that training
Lyle
from?
Steinman.
I'm sorry, and what was that name?
Lyle Steinman.
And when did you receive that training?
I don't remember the date.
Okay, just the decade will do.
A decade is good. A decade ago.
Decade ago, okay. How did Chili Blue react to the progressive bark collar?
Appropriately.
Have you ever researched using such devices with dogs with a history of anxiety?
No.
All right. Do you consider yourself a professional dog trainer?
No.
Okay. Are you a member of the Association of Professional Dog Trainers?
No.
Are you a member of the International Association of Canine Professionals?
No.
Are you a member of the National Canine Dog Trainers Association?
No.
Are you a member of the National Association of Dog Obedience Instructors?
No.
Are you a member of any national dog training organizations?
No.
Have you submitted an application to join the Dallas County Dog Training Club?
No.
Are you certified by the Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers?
No.
Were you qualified to provide the services you agreed to provide to the plaintiffs?
That's subjective.
I'm asking you if you were qualified to provide the services that you provided for BJ and Ken Stratton. And the question is whether you were qualified
The
to
Strattons
provide...
thought I was.
Now let's talk about the 5th week you had Chili Blue, and if I'm correct, that would be the week that you started using the e-collar. Is that correct?
Correct.
What did you work on him with during that 5th week? Excuse me.
Off-lead healing, including sits, right turns, left turns, right pivots, left turns, about turns, U-turns, and recalls, and not barging out of kennel.
How did Chili Blue perform during that 5th week?
Actually, quite well.
Okay. Any problems you noticed with Chili Blue during that 5th week?
No.
All right, let's talk about the 6th week you had Chili Blue, which would have been, I guess, around the week of November 14th. What did you work on him with during that 6th week?
Off-lead healing, including sits, right turns, left turns, U-turns, pivots, extended recalls. We continued our hold work.
Okay, anything else?
Nothing that I can recall.
Okay. And how did Chili Blue perform during that 6th week?
Well,
Any problems with Chili Blue that you noticed during that week?
no.
When did you first meet BJ Stratton?
When Chili Blue was 6 months old.
All right. And for what purpose were y'all introduced? Was it just as friends, or was it for the Golden Retriever relationship?
They came to my property for a training day.
Okay. So at that training day, there was multiple people with Golden Retrievers that day. Is that correct?
Correct.
Was Ken Stratton there that day?
Correct.
And was that the first time you met Ken as well?
Correct.
How did y'all get in contact to set up this third time where you actually took Chili Blue into your care?
The Strattons contacted me in the spring of 2016, asked me if I was still dog training. I said yes. They asked me if I had available space. I said no and politely declined. They also contacted me in the summer of 2016 to see if I was available to train Chili Blue. I declined. They contacted me in September of 2016 about training Chili Blue. At that point in time is when we discussed him coming to stay with me.
Let's talk about the 7th week you had Chili Blue. What did you work on him with during that 7th week?
Off-lead healing with sits, right turns, left turns, U-turns, about turns, pivots, extended recalls, holding the bumper.
Okay. Anything else that comes to mind?
He may have received a mark, if you understand that term.
I do not. If you could explain it briefly, I would appreciate it.
It's where you have a gunner in the field who throws a bird for the dog to go and retrieve and come back with.
Okay.
Highly possible at that point in time he got some marking.
Okay. How did Chili Blue perform during that 7th week?
Quite well.
All right. Any problems with Chili Blue during that 7th week?
I believe that's the time period when he began self-mutilation.
Okay, and when you say self-mutilation, do you mean the damage to his tail and the scrotum?
God, I can't say that word. Mutilation, by my definition, was when he pulled his tail feathers out.
Now, is
The
that...
self-harming behavior is him pulling his tail out. The irritation to the scrotum is from it's caused by multiple reasons.
Okay, all right. And
So-
I understand now. Okay, what are those multiple reasons?
The dog pulling his tail feathers out and the irritation to the scrotum.
No, I'm sorry. You said there was multiple reasons for
Oh, I'm sorry, I
the
didn't-
injury to his scrotum. What were those multiple reasons?
They can chew on themselves. They can... I'm not a vet. I'm sorry. I'm not a vet.
Okay. So you do know that there's multiple reasons, you just don't know what those multiple reasons are.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. When's the first time you noticed just something amiss?
The day after Thanksgiving,
Okay, all right. And what did you notice?
the dog had removed his tail feathers and there was irritation to the scrotum.
Refer to it as a wound, and go ahead and you talk about what you did once you discovered these wounds.
I made a call to Ken Stratton. He did not answer the phone. I made a call to BJ Stratton. I advised her that Chili Blue had removed his tail feathers. I indicated to her that it appeared to be irritated, but there was no blood and no open wound. That the end of the tail appeared like my little finger. I asked BJ Stratton if she believed I should take the dog to the vet.
And what was her response?
She did not know. She asked me to observe the dog. Let me put it this way. We agreed that we would observe the dog, and should the condition progress, I would contact them with updates.
Did you call BJ the day after Thanksgiving when you first
I
noticed
called
it?
her on the date of the occurrence.
What I'm trying to get at is the day that you noticed it, you called them.
Yes.
So you agreed that you would observe the dog and you would contact them with updates if anything got worse. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great.
I also had a similar conversation with Ken Stratton that day
Okay,
in the afternoon. BJ's was in the morning, Ken's was in the afternoon.
okay.
I reiterated the description of the hairless tail. I indicated that it was pink, it was no longer irritated. My specific words, it looks like the end of my little finger or the top of a bald man's head. I asked him if he had spoken with BJ. He indicated he had. He also told me that he had contacted his vet. I asked him if his vet had provided a protocol. His exact words were, they didn't seem to be overly concerned, as they felt it could be an insect bite, anal glands, or numerous other things. I again asked Ken if he wanted me to take the dog to the vet. And I advised him that BJ had indicated that we were to observe the dog and provide updates should the situation change.
Okay. And after you told him that, what was his opinion on whether the dog should be taken to the vet?
He concurred with BJ's assessment to observe the dog and be notified of any additional changes.
All right. Did you do anything to the tail or scrotum other than observe it at that time, on that day?
On that day, yes, I put an Elizabethan collar on the dog to prevent him from getting to the tail, and I administered half of an acepromazine, which was provided by the client.
Okay. And so you went ahead and applied the Elizabethan collar at on the day after Thanksgiving then?
Yes.
Okay. All right. How long did you keep the Elizabethan collar on Chili Blue?
Until they came and got him on December 3rd, except when we were training.
So just to clarify, you would take the Elizabethan collar off when you would take him out for the 2 to 3 training sessions a day that he would have, but you would immediately put it back on whenever he went back into, or whenever he was not in those training sessions.
Correct.
Okay. Did you take it off at any other time?
No.
Okay. When you accept a dog into your care, do you make any arrangement with the dog's owner for emergency medical care?
It's their responsibility.
And why is that their responsibility?
Standard industry practice.
All right. It's standard industry practice.
Yes.
Okay. So you don't document what's going to happen in the case of emergency medical care?
That it is the owner's responsibility.
What if the event is extremely time critical, such as a snake bite or trauma injuries from a dog fight, when you might not be able to reach the owner? What do you do in a situation like that when you have a dog you're boarding?
That would be an assumption. It would be on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. But you don't document what happens in those instances?
I'm sure that if it was an emergency situation, I would document it.
Right, but you stated earlier that any emergency medical care is the responsibility of the owner. Is that correct?
I said financial responsibility.
Okay. Getting emergency veterinary care for any animals in your care that have been boarded with you, is that your responsibility?
In a situation that required veterinary intervention, yes.
All right, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 1. And I'll represent to you, it's just an example of, I mean, I'm not a dog person like you said, but or in the dog world, but this is an example of a contract or documentation that is often used for what should happen in emergency uses. Is there any reason you have never used a form like this when you've boarded dogs before to handle when a situation like this comes up with emergency dog care?
Wasn't required.
Okay. All right. So you've just never had the situation come up before, so you've never thought to have a form to handle emergency vet care. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. All right. How am I mistaken?
I have relationships with the people that I do business with. They understand that should their dog be in a position that requires veterinary intervention, I will contact them. There was no need for this type of agreement.
They believed you do the right thing.
Yes.
What is a junior level AKC hunt test?
It's the entry level of competition retriever trials, tests, retriever tests.
Retriever tests. Okay. And I see you putting focus on that test word. So I guess there's field trials as well, and those are different. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Can you kind of distinguish those for me, please?
Honestly, it would take a lifetime for you to understand.
So were you training Chili Blue to work in, or to eventually compete in hunt tests?
He was being assessed for his capability to compete in a hunting test.
Okay, so this training was just kind of the very beginning. Let's just see if he can even do a hunting test.
Correct.
What was your agreement as to payment with the Strattons for the boarding and the training?
Our arrangement was that they would pay me $650 monthly.
Okay. Now, you said that you used the progressive bark collar with Chili Blue. And you said you didn't know when you started using it. Do you have an approximate idea of when you started using it?
I would guess 2 weeks after he came to me.
Reading what it states here in this bottom of page 7, specifically where it says, if a stressed dog suddenly receives a painful shock on its neck, it is much more likely to become even more stressed and increase its vocalizing, thus receiving more shocks. These collars cannot distinguish why a dog is barking, so just keep shocking away. Because they are triggered by sound, even another dog's bark can trigger the collar around a dog that is being quiet. For these reasons alone, these devices should never be used in multi-dog household or places with multiple dogs like a boarding or daycare facility. Now, do you agree with that statement?
I don't have any experience with this situation, so I can't agree or disagree.
You often will consult the dog owners about if they have a wound or an injury or something like that, correct?
Contact. I didn't say consult, I said contact.
Okay. Did you consult BJ and Ken Stratton in this case?
I contacted BJ, as I previously said to you. I contacted Ken Stratton immediately upon the occurrence. There was no response. I immediately turned and contacted BJ. You recall this?
I'm asking whether you consulted with the pet's owner.
Regarding?
As you refer to them, the wounds to Chili Blue.
We had a conversation regarding Chili Blue the day of the occurrence.
In that conversation, did you consult with them about how to proceed?
I asked them how they would like me to proceed.
Is it typically your practice to ask the owners of dogs that you're boarding how to treat wounds or injuries on dogs when they can't even see the severity of those injuries or wounds?
I have no experience in that regard.
All right. You have claimed in this lawsuit that the plaintiffs, Ken and BJ Stratton, should have done something differently to care for Chili Blue once they took him back from you. What do you think they should have done differently?
That's very subjective, sir.
Well, you're making the claim that if they had done something differently, he wouldn't have gotten the damage, that he wouldn't have been damaged in the way that he was damaged. So that's what I'm trying to understand is what are you saying they should have done differently?
According to the vet documents that have been received by all of us, they chose to leave the wound open. and to self-manage the tail. With the dog not being crate trained, they chose to not crate the dog, leaving him open for additional damage by banging it on gosh only knows what.
Okay. Anything else?
Not that I can think of at this moment.
Do you remember asking for Chili Blue's veterinary contact information?
I didn't ask for it.
When asked if they needed to bring it, did you tell them that they needed to?
It was not discussed.
All right, I'm going to mark this as Exhibit 3 here. And this is an email from Rita Robins to Ken, and I will point you to number 1 there, where it looks like you have answered by starring, and it says, in addition to Blue's dry food, what do we need to bring? And under vet contact information, you have put a star yes. Does that refresh your memory?
Yes, it does, and thank you for that.
You're welcome.